All right, listen up. If you work anywhere in the JavaScript ecosystem, you really need to stop what you're doing and pay attention for the next few minutes. A truly critical vulnerability has just been disclosed, and honestly, it requires your immediate action. This is the story of React2Shell. Okay, let's just get right to it. We're looking at a 10.0 on the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. For anyone who doesn't know, that is a perfect score. It literally does not get any more severe than this. This is not a drill. This is a full-blown 5-alarm fire for developers. So what does a perfect 10 vulnerability actually look like in the real world? It looks like this: unauthenticated remote code execution. Let's just break that down real quick. Unauthenticated means an attacker needs 0 credentials, no username, no password, nothing. And remote code execution, well, that means they can run any code they want directly on your server. They don't need access to your building. All they need is an internet connection to get total control. Now, the security community has already given this thing a name: React2Shell, and it's being officially tracked as CVE 2025-55182. This was all brought to light by the React team on December 3rd, 2025, and it sent absolute shockwaves through the entire development community. So how does something this bad actually happen? Well, the vulnerability is buried deep inside the flight protocol. You know, that's the magic that React server components use to stream the UI from the server over to the client. We're going to break down exactly how it works. And don't worry, it's actually more straightforward and, frankly, way more terrifying than you'd think. At its very core, the problem is something called unsafe deserialization. Now, this type of flaw is dangerously common because it hits on a really hard problem. How much do you trust data coming from the outside world? Think of it this way. Imagine a mailroom clerk gets a package. It's got a really official-looking label on it, so they open it up and just immediately start following the instructions inside. No questions asked. Except those instructions say, hand over the keys to the entire building. That is exactly what your server is doing with an attacker's data. It's trusting it blindly. The attack path itself is almost deceptively simple. First, the attacker cooks up a specially crafted HTTP request. Second, your server's flight protocol gets that request, and because of that deserialization flaw, it just processes it like it's a real set of commands. And finally, the attacker's code runs. Game over. They own your server, plain and simple. And what can they do once they have that access? Basically everything. They can read and write any file on your server. They can steal all your environment variables, exposing your precious API keys, database credentials, all your secrets. And from there, they can pivot and start attacking other machines inside your internal network, which can lead to a total infrastructure compromise. It's a nightmare scenario. All right, now for the part where this gets a little personal. It's time for you to assess your own blast radius and figure out if your applications are vulnerable. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, I'm safe. I don't use any of those complex server functions. But here's the real kicker. The danger is in the default configuration. A lot of frameworks enable these vulnerable features right out of the box. That means even a basic Hello World project that you spun up from a standard template could be completely exposed. Okay, everyone, this is the slide you need to screenshot. Look at this table very, very carefully. If you're using React or React DOM versions 19.0.0 all the way through 19.2.0, you are vulnerable. If you're on Next.js versions 15 or 16, you are vulnerable. And for other big frameworks like React Router, Expo, and Redwood, you need to go check with the vendor right now. All right, we've laid out the problem. Let's talk about the solution. And this isn't a suggestion, okay? This is a clear, non-negotiable checklist to get your systems secure immediately. Step 1, upgrade your React packages. Get them to the patched versions. Step 2, upgrade your framework, whether it's Next.js or something else, to the latest secure version. And step 3, and please do not skip this part, you have to completely rebuild and redeploy your application. Just changing a version number in your package.json is not enough. The patched code has to actually be running in production. And just so there's absolutely no confusion, here are some of the specific versions you should be looking for. For React, you want to be on at least 19.0.1 or one of the higher patched versions. For Next.js, you can see there's a whole range of patched versions available, depending on which minor version you're on. Find the right one for you and update. And I want to be crystal clear about something. I know some teams are going to be tempted to just slap a temporary firewall rule, a WAF rule on this, and call it a day. That is not a fix. As this quote confirms, relying on those WAF rules is just not enough. Attackers are smart, they're creative, and they will find a way to bypass those simple signatures. Patching your software is the only real long-term solution here. So what are the real stakes here? This really goes beyond just, good security hygiene. It's about understanding why you have to act and why you have to act now. Look, this is not a what-if scenario. This is not a theoretical threat. Proof of concept exploits are already public. But even more importantly, security researchers are confirming that this is being actively exploited out in the wild by all sorts of threat actors, including some really sophisticated state nexus groups. They are scanning the internet as we speak, looking for vulnerable servers. And if you need any more proof of how serious this is, here you go. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, has added this vulnerability to its official catalog of known exploited threats. That's a huge signal. It means the U.S. government is literally mandating its own federal agencies to patch this immediately. You should be doing the exact same thing. And that brings us to our final thought. Let's say you do everything right. You've patched, you're safe from React2Shell. Fantastic. But this whole crisis revealed a much deeper truth, the hidden danger of the default configuration. So the question I really want to leave you with is this. What other features are enabled by default in your stack that you aren't even aware of? Your systems are patched today, sure, but is your default configuration your next blind spot?